My name is Sarah, and I'm about to turn 20. I am on the threshold of an important stage in my life, finishing my studies at college, where I study finance. This is a difficult specialty, and although many of my friends complain about unbearable lecture hours and sleepless nights, unlike them, I find some strange peace in these numbers and formulas. I guess I've always been like this, calm and passionate about what others thought was just boring. However, right now I can't fully focus on the upcoming exams. In a dorm room littered with textbooks, empty coffee cups, and a mountain of crumpled sheets, my gaze involuntarily falls on the calendar. It's already the last week before the exams, and the day of my 20th birthday, which I can't forget, is approaching like a bolt from the blue. My family has always planned to celebrate my birthday as soon as I pass all these exams, but the thought that this holiday is waiting for me again always leaves a bitter taste in me. Family holidays, especially birthdays, have always been for me those days when I felt like a stranger, out of place. Every year this feeling only got stronger. My older sister Emma is a golden child, the one who has always been on a pedestal in the eyes of my parents, was the person they raised and decorated with their attention and care, and I was just a shadow, always remaining in the background, as an inconspicuous addition to the holidays, to joy. I was 8 when I first realized this. It was the day Emma celebrated her 13th birthday. The house was in complete chaos, a bouncy castle, a magician with colorful cards, and a pie that was so big that it could feed an army. I sat in the corner and looked at all these wonders with bated breath, thinking that when my birthday came, I would also be given something similar. But when my day came, which was only a few months later, I received from my parents only a small cake from the grocery store and a pair of socks. I tried to hide my pain and not cry, but tears involuntarily welled up. My mother, noticing my tears, stroked my head and, almost with irritation, said, "Don't be dramatic, Sarah, it's just a birthday." It was the moment when I realized for the first time that I was not like everyone else, that I was less important. Everything about Emma was important, and it wasn't so important what happened to me. Every year this dissonance only became brighter. Emma got a new mobile phone every year, and I got her old models. She could afford designer clothes, while I wore what was left after her, with the approval of our parents. When Emma graduated from high school, her parents bought her a car, and when I graduated, they gave me a gift card to the bookstore. It was especially frustrating because I knew their heart wasn't there. Books were something I loved doing, but I still felt that it was more of a comfort to them than a real concern. Only my grandmother has always been the one who believed in me, who saw something special in me. When I told her that I wanted to study finance, she was thrilled. "You have a good head on your shoulders, Sarah," she told me then, and I felt her words fill the void that had been so often in my life. My grandmother always told me that I would go far, and her words, even when I was still a little girl, supported me in difficult moments. And now, when I am on the threshold of my 20th birthday, my grandmother insisted on arranging a real holiday for me, as she said, in honor of your success. She gave my parents a few thousand to organize the day I'd been waiting for. I was shocked. Usually my parents shrugged off holidays, and more than once I heard from them that a birthday is not a reason to spend extra money. But now they couldn't argue with Grandma. Instead of brushing it off again, they took the money and told me to focus on the exams. Mom looked up at me as if she'd been caught off guard, even though she probably knew I was supposed to arrive at that exact time. My father nervously smoothed his hair with his hand, avoiding eye contact with me. There was a tense silence in the room, the kind that makes the blood pound in your ears. "Sarah, are you here already?" Mom finally said, trying to keep her voice cheerful. But I could hear the uncertainty in her tone. It was weird. She was usually indifferent to my visits. Her voice sounded habitually monotonous, as if I was just another household duty that she couldn't ignore. "Yes, I'm home," I replied, looking from her to my father. "Is everything all right?" Mom shot a quick glance at Dad, as if pushing him to say something, but he just shook his head, silently returning her initiative. She pursed her lips, as if struggling with some inner tension, and then said, "It's okay. You must be tired from the journey. Are you hungry? Are you hungry?" I asked, feeling a wave of irritation rise inside me. Mom, where is everyone? Where is the preparation? Grandma said it would be a big celebration. Her face twitched, but she quickly pulled herself together. Sarah, please sit down, she said, pointing to a chair next to the sofa. Her voice was soft, but there was such alarm in it that I felt a chill run down my spine. What's going on? I asked, not moving from my place. Mom sighed, and Dad finally uttered the first word of all time. Grandma. She canceled the party. These words, so simple and short, echoed in my head. What? I couldn't believe my ears. But why? She organized everything herself. She gave you the money to arrange everything. Sarah, listen, Mom interrupted, her voice getting firmer. Grandma just changed her plans. It's her decision. There was nothing we could do. Couldn't you do anything? I felt a wave of anger rising inside me. So you didn't even try? My father smoothed his hair again, avoiding my gaze. Mom looked annoyed, but clearly not at Grandma, but at me for making a scene. Sarah, it's just a birthday, she said, almost hissing. You're being too dramatic. You're being too dramatic. These words were like a blow to my chest. They took me back to that 8-year-old day when I was standing in front of a store cake and a pair of cheap socks, trying to figure out why I was always in the background. Why my emotions have always been not important enough. But Grandma said. I started, but Mom interrupted me. She's changed her mind, Sarah. Maybe you should stop making a storm in a glass because of this. I felt my throat constrict with rage and pain. I wanted to scream, throw something, but I knew it would only make the situation worse. Where's Grandma? I asked, ignoring my parents' attempts to calm me down. Mom shrugged her shoulders. She's at home. If you want to talk to her, you can go. Without saying another word, I turned around and walked to the door. The questions were ringing in my head. Why did she do this? Why did she change her mind? Why didn't anyone tell me anything? Why did everything collapse again, as soon as I began to believe that this time everything would be different? The road to Grandma's house, usually cozy and familiar, seemed endless this time. Every turn, every bend in the road only increased the anxiety that was sitting in my stomach like a lump. When I arrived, the house looked the same as always, neat, with a white fence and flowering rose bushes by the porch. But something about him seemed alien, wrong. I went up the steps and knocked. Nothing happened for a few moments, and I was about to knock again when the door opened. Grandma was standing in front of me. Her face was tired, but there was genuine kindness in her eyes. Sarah, honey, are you home yet? She said, smiling, but her smile was strained. Grandma, what's going on? I asked, getting straight to the point. Why did you cancel the party? Grandma drove the car in silence, only occasionally throwing me short looks full of sympathy. We were driving through familiar streets that had become almost indifferent to me over the years, but now, in light of what had happened, they suddenly seemed completely alien. Every turn of the road increased in me the feeling of liberation from the suffocating atmosphere in which I had spent my whole life. Tears rolled down my cheeks, knowing no barriers, and I did not try to stop them. Grandma let me cry myself out without asking questions, without comforting me with words that could only make the situation worse. She knew that I just needed to feel my pain, let it go out, so as not to carry it inside. When I finally stopped sobbing, her soft but confident voice sounded in the silence. Sarah, you deserve more. It wasn't your fault, honey. Never let them make you think that you should be content with what they consider sufficient. Her words pierced my heart. I can't remember the last time someone so openly admitted that what I felt was right. I nodded, unable to find the words, but her voice continued to sound calm and determined. They're wrong, dear. I've let them treat you like you're less important for too long. But from now on, everything will change. We arrived at her house. A small cozy cottage with bright flowers in the flower beds by the porch looked like an oasis of tranquility and warmth. Grandma stopped the car and put her hand on mine. Almost for the first time in many years, someone touched me with such care. "Go inside, Sarah," she said. "Today we will give you a holiday. Maybe it won't be the way you dreamed, but I promise you will feel that you are special." Her words warmed me up, but doubt still stirred somewhere deep inside. I wanted to believe her, I wanted to feel the joy she promised me, but years of disappointment and resentment made me cautious. Nevertheless, I nodded and got out of the car, feeling a light breeze blowing across my reddened cheeks. The inside of the house smelled warm and cozy, as if the space itself was trying to comfort me. Grandma turned on the light, and I noticed that there were boxes of ribbons, balloons, and candles on the kitchen table. Obviously, she was going to finish the preparations here, far from my orphanage, which has long ceased to be a home for me in the true sense of the word. "I have everything I need to make this day unforgettable," she said with a sincere smile. "But first you need to rest. Go to the guest room, get yourself cleaned up. We have a big night ahead of us." I wanted to protest, to say that I didn't need a holiday, that I was too tired and broken to be happy, but instead I just nodded. Perhaps it was a manifestation of her love, that rare feeling for me that I was afraid to reject. In the room where my grandmother took me, I saw an antique bed with clean, freshly laundered linen and a stack of books on the bedside table. Everything in this place radiated calmness, and I felt my tense muscles begin to relax a little. I looked in the mirror that hung over the dresser. My face was tired, my eyes were swollen with tears, but in my reflection, for the first time in a long time, I saw something new, uncertain hope. When I returned to the living room, Grandma had already laid out decorations on the table and was holding bright pink candles in her hands. Her eyes, usually soft and kind, burned with a spark of determination. "Sarah," she said, looking up at me, "you deserve to feel special. And I won't let anyone, not even your parents, take that right away from you." I could feel tears starting to gather in my eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of pain, but something else, something almost unrecognizable. Joy? Gratitude? Perhaps both. Grandma smiled, but it was the smile of a predator who knows that the victim has fallen into a trap. Her eyes, usually so kind, now glowed with icy determination. "Oh, Emma, dear," she began with such calmness that I felt a chill run down my spine. "Your card is blocked because the money I gave your parents was meant for someone else." There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. Then Emma's voice, usually so confident, faltered. "But, Grandma, it's me, this money. We're already in Hawaii. How do I pay for the hotel now?" Grandma just snorted. "It's not my concern anymore, Emma. You knew that this money was meant for your sister's birthday. You knew they weren't yours. But you decided to use them anyway, didn't you?" "But it's just a party," Emma shouted. "I thought that. Well, Sarah wouldn't mind. She doesn't like holidays anyway." I felt a wave of anger rising inside me. She was so brazen, so sure of her rightness, that I almost screamed. But Grandma squeezed my hand, urging me to stay calm. "Emma, you always thought you could take whatever you wanted," she said, and her voice turned as cold as a winter wind. "But this time you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions. If you need help, I can advise you to go home and find a job. The money I gave your parents will no longer be spent on your whims." "But, Grandma," Emma almost choked with rage. "You can't be serious. It's humiliating. I can't just come back. Then you'll have to stay where you are," Grandma snapped, her voice so firm that I could barely resist the urge to applaud. "And please don't bother me anymore. I'm celebrating Sarah's birthday today, and nothing should distract me from it." She pressed the button to turn off the call, and turned to me with a wide smile. "Well, Sarah, let's have tea with the last piece of cake. I think today is worth celebrating properly." I couldn't help but smile back. For the first time in many years, I felt that someone was truly on my side. My room suddenly felt cramped and suffocating, as if the walls had moved closer to squeeze me into this silence. I looked at the phone lying on the bed and felt the rage and pain mixing inside me, forming an uncontrollable chaos. My mother's words, her cold, cool directness, still rang in my ears. I heard that phrase over and over again, as if it was echoing. I should never have given birth to you. I had to have an abortion. It was as if something in me had snapped, leaving only emptiness. This was not unexpected. I had long known that my parents were indifferent to me, but to hear it directly, in such a merciless form, was like getting a knife in the back. My body was shaking, and I couldn't tell if it was from anger or pain. I sat down on the bed and covered my face with my hands, trying to calm down. The tears that I was trying so hard to hold back came in a torrent. All the years of resentment, all the moments when I was left in the shadows, all the wounds that I tried to heal, were reopened. It felt like the whole world had collapsed on me at once, and I couldn't find the strength to resist it. But at that moment, my grandmother's words popped into my head. Her voice was like a small light in this darkness, breaking through the pain. You deserve more. You deserve to be loved and appreciated. I got out of bed and went to the window. There was the usual bustle behind him. Students were hurrying somewhere, someone was laughing, someone was talking on the phone. Life went on as usual, and none of them knew what I was going through right now. But looking at this world, I suddenly realized that I have a choice. I could afford to wallow in the pain and resentment that my parents threw in my face over and over again. Or I could stop giving them power over me. I wiped my tears and took out my phone. I opened a chat with my grandmother and wrote her a short message. Thank you for having me. I do not know what I would do without you. The answer came almost immediately. You are my pride, Sarah. You're stronger than you think. They don't deserve your tears. Remember that. These words enveloped me with warmth. I took a deep breath and felt a new resolve awaken in me. It wasn't just one day or one incident. It was the moment when I finally began to realize that I could live for myself. I didn't have to put up with my family's toxicity. I don't owe them anything. The next day, I decided to meet with the university counselor to discuss my future plans. I had the opportunity to stay for summer courses, which I always considered an unnecessary burden, but now the idea of not returning home seemed like a salvation to me. I could use this time to focus on myself, on my future. When I returned to the room after the meeting, my phone vibrated again. It was Emma. Another voice message. I thought for a moment, maybe I should ignore him, but curiosity got the better of me, and I pressed the button. Sarah, it's me, Emma. Her voice sounded different. No longer angry, unsure of himself, as before. Listen, I don't know what to say. It's all out of control. I know that Grandma is on your side, and I guess you're too. I'm sorry, okay? Forgive her. These words seemed almost impossible. How can you forgive all these years, all the injustice? But I suddenly realized that it didn't matter. Forgiveness is not for her. This is for me. I deleted the message without replying. I knew I didn't need her approval or her apology to get on with my life. Jake smiled, his smug expression only intensified, as if he had already won some invisible game. Of course, Sarah, he said, leaning closer. I'll wait as long as you need. You're worth it. His words sounded smooth, almost perfect, but something inside me clenched. This feeling was both anger and disbelief. I knew this was just another manipulation, but I needed more time to figure out exactly what he was up to. Great, I replied, trying to maintain a visible lightness. I'll write to you as soon as I make a decision. He nodded and stood up, once again giving me the same penetrating look that might have made my heart flutter earlier. But now I saw only falsehood in him. When Jake left, I stayed at the table, trying to collect my thoughts. What did he really want? Why did he suddenly appear right now, when I finally began to build my life without the constant influence of my family. Maybe he was here for a reason. Perhaps it was another act of manipulation on the part of my sister or even my parents. I took out my phone and sent a message to my grandmother. "I need to talk to you. Are you free tonight?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Always for you, honey. Come to my place after class." Later, sitting in Grandma's cozy kitchen, I told her about the strange encounter with Jake. Her face tightened as soon as I mentioned his name. She put the kettle on the stove and turned to me, her gaze serious. "Sarah, you know what he's doing, don't you?" "What is it?" she asked, crossing her arms over her chest. "I think so," I replied, although I wasn't sure. "But why would he do that? Why did he suddenly decide that he wanted to be with me?" Grandma sat down opposite, her eyes glittering, as if she saw much more than she was saying. "Your parents and sister probably think you're the weak link. They know they can't ask you directly for help after everything that's happened. But if Jake convinces you, if he makes you believe that you are important to him, they can use it." I felt a chill run down my spine. It sounded logical. It's too logical. But how far are they willing to go? "Do you think Emma is involved in this?" I asked, my voice shaking with emotion. Grandma shook her head. "It's hard to say. Jake has always seemed to me like a man who only cares about himself. He may be acting in his own interests, but I wouldn't be surprised if your family pushed him to do it." I clenched my fists under the table. Did they really think that I would let them drag me into their games again? After all they've done? But if this was their strategy, then they had already lost. What should I do? I asked, looking into Grandma's eyes. Her face softened. She put her hand on mine. "You know what to do, honey. Just don't let them control you. If you want, play their game, but on your own terms." I thought about her words, and something new began to form in me, a plan that could help me break once and for all these chains that my family had held me for so long. The next day, I texted Jake. "Let's meet on Friday night. I have something important that I want to talk about." He answered almost instantly. "I can't wait. I knew you'd understand me." I looked at the phone screen and felt a strange mixture of tension and confidence. If he really wants to play this game, then he will have to face a new, strong Maine. I've been preparing all week, thinking through every detail. I knew Jake expected an easy victory, but he didn't realize that I was no longer the Sarah he once knew. I was ready to show him what it meant to date someone who had finally found his strength. I stood against the wall, looking up at the gray sky, as if I were looking for answers there. Taking a deep breath and exhaling for a long time did not help me cope with the rolling wave of emotions. The whole situation was like a bad dream that I couldn't wake up from. Jake, Emma, my parents. All of them, as it turned out, were part of one big manipulation that I was a victim of. I walked slowly towards the dorm, hoping that a quiet room would at least help me sort out my thoughts a little. When I reached my door, my legs were shaking and my heart was still pounding. Once inside, I just sat down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. My family has always been far from ideal, but I couldn't imagine that they would be capable of such a thing. Grandma's money. These words rang in my head like an annoying bell. How many times have I asked myself why they do this to me, but I never would have thought it was about inheritance. Grandma, my only support, became a target for them because of her love for me. My mind kept coming back to Emma's words. The old bat got wind of this somehow. They tried to deprive her of the right to control her own life, and only thanks to her determination it failed. But the worst part was that I was now their next target. I could see Jake, smiling his perfect smile, weaving nets to lure me in. I felt the cold touch of his words, as if I already knew how he was going to convince me to give them access to my grandmother's money. He was just another actor in this disgusting play that my family was playing. I got out of bed and took out my phone. I should have warned one person right away. "Grandma," I said as soon as she answered. "We need to talk." Her voice, warm and a little surprised, immediately calmed me down. Of course, dear. Something happened? Jake, Emma. They know everything. About the will. That you left everything to me. And, Grandma, they tried to declare you insane. There was silence on the line. I felt Grandma straighten up on the other end of the line. Her voice became firm. Thank you for telling me, Sarah. I already suspected this, but it's good to know that my assumptions have been confirmed. You have to be careful, honey. They might try to drag you into this. They've already tried, I said, feeling my anger rise again. Jake said he wants to date me. Grandma sighed softly, but there was steel in her voice. I won't let them hurt you, Sarah. We'll figure out how to deal with it. But above all, remember, you don't owe them anything. You deserve your life and your freedom. Her words became a support for me again. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it, and said, Thank you, Grandma. I'll call you later. The following days passed in tense anticipation. Jake wrote me several messages, each of which was even more insistent. He promised that he would make me happy, that everything between us would be real. I answered briefly, as if weighing his words, but another decision was maturing inside me. When the day of our meeting finally came, I put on my simplest clothes, jeans and a dark turtleneck. No attempt to make an impression. It was my armor. I went to the cafe knowing that I had to play my part to the end to see how far he was willing to go. Jake was already waiting for me. His smile was as perfect as ever, but now I saw something more behind it, a hidden greed, a confidence that he could deceive me. I sat down across from him, putting my coffee cup on the table. Sarah, he began, sinking into a chair closer to me, I'm glad you came. I know this is all unexpected for you, but I want you to know, I'm serious. His voice was as smooth as silk, but there was another story in his eyes. He played his role perfectly. I pretended to think about his words before answering. Did you say you love me all this time? I asked, leaning a little closer. Even when you were dating my sister? He nodded, as if it was the most natural confession in the world. Yes, Sarah. Emma was the wrong person. But you're real. I see that we can be together. I felt anger boiling up inside me. But I knew I had to stay calm. That's interesting, I replied, allowing a slight smile to appear on my face. I have to think about it, Jake. His eyes lit up like a predator that scents prey. As the days passed, my life slowly but surely became one that I could call my own. Grandma remained a constant support and source of inspiration. She taught me not only numbers and strategies, but also how to build a life based on my own values, not on other people's expectations. Every morning we started with a cup of tea, sitting in her cozy living room. There were always piles of papers on the table, reports, contracts, plans. Grandma patiently explained every detail to me, sharing her experiences and observations. Sometimes her stories went back to how she started her business from scratch. These were stories about difficult decisions, about risks and failures, about victories that seemed impossible. Her voice became lively and sincere when she talked about those years. Sarah, she said one day, slightly adjusting her glasses while sitting at the table. Success is not just about money or power. It's the ability to stand up straight when everyone around you is trying to bend. Remember that. I hung on her every word. Her lessons were not just about business, but about life, about how to be a person who knows what he wants and is not afraid to go his own way. This knowledge became a new foundation for me, solid and reliable, which I had never felt before. But despite all this, the past sometimes knocked on my door. The messages from my parents and Emma stopped, but sometimes I found myself checking the block numbers, as if subconsciously waiting for something. Maybe I was looking for a confession or an apology that they could never give. However, I quickly dismissed these thoughts. Each time, I reminded myself that their approval no longer mattered to me. Grandma felt my struggle, even if I didn't talk about it. She was just there, giving me space to think and time to heal. "Time heals, dear," she said one evening as we sat by the fireplace. "But you have to let him do it. Sometimes you need to let go of the past to take a step forward." By December, I was already well versed in asset management, and my grandmother suggested that I take on a small project. It was an insignificant investment plan by her standards, but it was a real challenge for me. I immersed myself in my work, analyzing every detail, considering the risks and exploring all possible options. Every step reminded me of how far I had come. When I presented my results to my grandmother, her eyes sparkled with pride. "You've exceeded my expectations, Sarah," she said. "I knew you could do it, but you proved it not only to me, but also to yourself." These words filled me with a confidence that had previously seemed unattainable. I began to believe in my strength, that I could cope with any task. I was no longer that timid girl who spent years trying to earn the love of her family. I was someone big, someone who was building my own future. At Christmas, Grandma arranged a small dinner for the two of us. The house was decorated with garlands and candles were burning on the fireplace. It was a quiet but warm evening, devoid of the hustle and drama that used to always accompany family holidays. "Sarah, I'm proud of you," Grandma said, raising her glass of champagne. "This year was not easy for you, but you passed it with dignity." I smiled, feeling her words warming me. "This year has been really difficult, but it has changed me." He was the turning point that divided my life into before and after. When we finished dinner, Grandma took a small gift bag out of the closet and handed it to me. "This is my special gift for you," she said with a warm smile. I found the keys inside. "This is your beginning," Grandma explained. "Keys to a small office in the city center. Now you have a place where you can develop your ideas and build your future." I stared at the keys in my hand, unable to hold back the tears. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a symbol of her faith in me, in my future, in who I had become. "Thanks, Grandma," I whispered, squeezing her hand. "Thanks for everything." She smiled, and in her eyes I saw love, the one I had been looking for so long.